Every once in a while, you read a book and it stays with you. And this is one that definitely will stay with me. We don't talk about that. And I'm very proud and honored to have the author right here, Giselle Roeder. Giselle, this is such an amazing story, and what really stays with me is that this is a true story about your childhood. So share with us this incredible journey.
It seems that my life comes in parts of 10 years. So the first 10 years of my childhood, starting from being born and my first memory when I was about 2, onwards to 11. And then everything changed. Now those first 10 years were under the Nazi regime. But as a child and in a village, we didn't know anything about it, right? We just knew that it was what it was. And the next 10 years were the really hard ones, but when you try to stay alive, you don't think about it. You just eat what you can find, from weeds to whatever, and you deal with the things that happen, but you don't think. I remember one occasion when, after the Russian invasion, when this blonde Ivan, as we called him, because there were 2 Ivans, crouched in front of me and said, "Gissi, would you come to the barn with me and play with me? I show you something very exciting." I was 11, and I played with my braids, and I shook my head because I'd seen enough that I knew what he was up to. He just laughed and said, "It's okay. When war over, I come back, marry you. You're a kid now, but you have old eyes." I was always wondering what happened to that man. If he made it through the rest of the journey to Berlin as a victor, or if he was killed at the end, I don't know.
Well, this is definitely a period in time which is so dark and not often talked about, and especially among the women. So how many years of silence did you live through?
Over 50.
All the horrible things that you experienced and saw.
You know, you put it to the back of your mind and you don't think of it. I was married 20 years to this Canadian husband that I finally got rid of my German life and went to Canada, married this man that I didn't know. 20 years later, I saw him yesterday, he still doesn't know, because he has lost his mind. He has dementia now. And he recognized me, but I never told him.
No. So what triggered you to write this book?
A lecture that I had to give to the Provost Club in Lanceville on Vancouver Island. They asked me if I would tell something about the Russian invasion of Germany on Remembrance Day. And I did that, and after that, 5 women were crying. It was so quiet in that room that I started to get scared because it was really emotional. And then all hell broke loose. "Do you have a book? You have a book? No, I don't have a book." "Then you must write one." So that started it off, and that's 4 years ago.
But what's really hard is to put your mind or wrap your mind around not only the atrocity, but just the brutality and the lack of respect as a human being. And we're talking grandmothers, we're talking mothers, sisters, daughters, little girls, old women. It didn't matter.
It didn't matter. They were all raped. Now the next question. Yeah.
I know. And yourself?
No. I was lucky. I was a very small child, and I had what that Russian term old eyes, and I had a way of looking at them that they would look away and also walk away. And there were grown-up women around us, and especially the evacuees from Berlin that got out because of the bombs. There was a lady with her daughter who was my age, and she always made sure that she made friends with the highest officer of the army that stayed in our house, right? We had to live in the attic of the workers' house, not even in our own house. But she always made sure that she made eyes. She was pretty, and she was 30, and that officer would protect us. The sneakiest part was from that day on, I was always having my eyes on my mother when the Russians first came into the house, right? When they entered the village and with tanks and big trucks and whatever. And then they came into the house, and the way the floors squeaked, I knew exactly where they were. We had left all the doors open through this long bungalow type of house. And the last door was just curtains, and that was closed, and we were all in the living room holding our breath. And then a bayonet poked through the curtain and a machine gun underneath, and that bayonet pulled the curtain aside, and there they were, and there we were. And what then comes was quite something. The main thing was uri uri, meaning watches.
Okay.
And they had their arms full of watches already. That happened during the time when we made more friends with them. Because for the first ones had to move on, but they were all Mongols, and they were the bad ones. You know, the congregation around the manure pile, that chapter is probably one of the worst. That was the next day. The Russians came on the 2nd of February into our village, and a few days later, on the 5th, they rounded up everybody between 16 and 60 who were not cripples, and the rest of these people were all loaded into trucks and taken away to Siberia. And my father had been in France and got the first week already a shot through his upper arm. So he couldn't lift a gun anymore, right? And he couldn't say Heil Hitler either, because he couldn't lift his arm, but he could shoe horses.
How has this affected you now, Giselle?
A lot of people had said, if something like this would happen now, you would have counseling. We had never heard that word before. We didn't know what that was, to tell somebody and they tell you what to do or not to think. It didn't work that way. So through all my life, I tried never to think about it anymore. And nobody did. My next sister was 8. She went through it, and when I started to write and I asked her if she remembers some of these things, no, she said, I don't even want to remember. And that is the main thing. People don't want to remember. I started asking my aunts, right? And they said, are you crazy? We don't talk about that. So I kept hearing that phrase. And this book, the first title, my working title was You Have Old Eyes. And because I heard that so often. And my aunts wouldn't talk about it. One branch of my family doesn't talk to me anymore.
Wow.
The offspring of that Lisa, you know,
Yes.
my babysitter's sister. And I took a university class at the Elder College in Nanaimo, a memoir writing course. And there was one German woman, she was 78, and I asked her if she has ever, her family, talked about this. Oh no, she said. We don't talk about that. And that day, when I came home, I said to Trevor, to my husband and partner, you know what, I'm going to change that title. We don't talk about that, because that's the answer I get from every single one. And so that's the right title. Then I had 9 people reading the book for commerce and things.
Yes.
Because after all, English is my second language. And I got a phone call 2 nights since she was through this. And she said, the subtitle is, you have to change the title. The book is incredible, but you can't use that title. I said, I love that title. And she said, no, I don't mean that one. I mean this one.
Oh.
I had a riveting family story.
Yeah.
And I said, well, what should I call it? And she said, it's an amazing story of survival. And that's what it
truly is.
became.
Well, Giselle, it definitely is. I think we will be talking about this. and certainly something that I think everyone should read and everyone should appreciate. So thank you so much, Giselle. Don't go away, though. We're going to find out the connection, the real connection between Winnipeg and Giselle.